Hello and welcome to the third in our series of bonus podcasts, Investments Unwrapped, brought to you by MoneyWeek and the Platinum Card from American Express, a card that offers over 30 travel and lifestyle benefits. In this series, we're looking not at the week gone by, but the years ahead, exploring the world of alternative investments. We've done wine and books, so today we are turning our attention to antique furniture. Is it possible to spruce up your apartment and bolster your bank balance at the same time? Sit back in your Regency-era armchair and get as comfortable as you can on wood. I'm Olly Mann, and this is Investments Unwrapped. And joining me around our big mahogany table with twirly bits on the feet, who else but MoneyWeek's executive editor, John Stepek. Welcome back, John.
Hi, Olly.
Which is it, Eames, eggs, or IKEA?
I think people who've listened to the other podcasts will know that by now that I'm basically a Philistine, so it's IKEA for me all the way.
And do you repurpose and recycle? Because that's the thing, isn't it? People say about the new furniture, it doesn't last.
Well, the nice thing is, one of my favourite pieces from IKEA is a table and chairs that my brother-in-law very kindly put together for us around the time that our second daughter was born. And it's actually sitting here in front of me and balancing my laptop on top of it. So that's lasted for a good kind of 15 years, and I'm sure it'll be an heirloom at some point.
There we are. Sentimentality and love for clearly rubbish furniture. That goes against, I'm sure, everything that our expert is about to tell us. It's James Kaye from renowned furniture dealers Butchoff Antiques. Hi there, James.
Hi there. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, welcome to the show. Your interest in antiques sort of runs in the blood, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. I'm a third-generation dealer, so the business was originally started by my grandfather in 1964 and run by my uncle Ian for many years, and my brother and myself joined.
And yet I must say I'm very disappointed because we're on a Zoom call and I can see behind you what looks like a kind of standard 1980s filing cabinet, whereas, I wanted something from the 30s at least.
Yeah, I was hoping you'd keep that quiet. I could take you out into the shop and into the showroom and give you a tour after, but this is where all the really unexciting things happen in the office in the back.
Well, when does something like that, I mean, forgive the slightly silly question, but like a filing cabinet, when can something like that jump from being functional to retro to vintage to genuinely antique? How do you know?
Well, in its most simple form, I suppose you could say that an antique is something that is 100 years old. That's the sort of starting point, if you like. So things now that are sort of early Art Deco period are starting to become considered as antique because they're from the 1920s, whereas 20 or 30 years ago they were sort of seen as classic or retro pieces, if you like. But obviously, there's a huge interest in mid-20th century furniture, and that's a whole, another discipline by itself, really.
And just to give us an overview of the market, you hear a lot about, I know you won't like this term, but brown furniture, don't you, kind of being lumped together. And that's because, isn't it, there was a revival in mid-century furniture, people looking for more modern antiques and kind of discounting all the other stuff, putting it all together.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose in the 1800s, from the 1700s and the 1800s, there was a lot of pieces that were probably quite functional, practical furniture at the time, things like sideboards and chest of drawers and wardrobes, dining tables and chairs. At the time, it was good quality, but not necessarily, the very best pieces made for the most important houses or anything like that. And a lot of those pieces, over the years, they have become less fashionable, and as a consequence, those prices are quite cheap. And, talking about IKEA furniture before, some of those pieces, sort of old Georgian chest of drawers that are 200 years old, that you can pick up probably for a comparable price to, something, maybe not IKEA, but a sort of modern, well-made piece of furniture. And actually, whilst it's not necessarily an expensive piece, it has 200 years of history. It's beautifully made. It will last another 200 years, very comfortably. And those are the sorts of things, perhaps they're not as fashionable as they were. Although, interestingly, I think there has been a sort of a slight revival in those pieces, in that people are starting to buy the odd piece to use. Perhaps, if I look at my parents' or my grandparents' generation, they were really filling their whole house full of antique pieces. And that's not how people live today.
No, well, let's return to that sort of resurgence in a moment. Before that, though, John, I suppose it's just worth remarking on this uncomfortable fact, really, I suppose, that compared to the other alternative investments we've discussed so far in this series, books and wine, you can't just say, oh, there's been a historically upward trend. Antiques does seem a bit more stuttery and shaky and, dare I say, risky. You need to really take a gamble on what you're buying unless it's absolutely the blue chip stuff everyone knows has had value for centuries.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a really interesting area because, as we've sort of said on the books and the wine already, and if you look at other asset classes that could be classed as alternative assets, then a lot of time they've gone up, and they've gone up in line with interest rates going down. So lots of money being in the world, and lots of it is flooded into these different asset classes. But certainly one of the interesting things about antique furniture, I think it's partly because it's not as homogenous. You made the point about brown furniture, and I think that the kind of collapse in the value of brown furniture has been the main thing that has been considered. Because I know that obviously there is a lot of interest in kind of mid-century kind of, Formica sort of stuff from the 1950s that, at one point we'd have thought was, why would anyone want that? And now it's kind of really fashionable. So I think it's a tricky one to lump together. But I do think that points to one of the main facts about furniture. It is so personal. It's also much more dictated by fashion, even than I mean, these assets are all dictated by fashion to an extent, but this one's very much so. And if you think about it, you also can't store it. Most people can't store it anywhere. You can stick wine in a cellar, books on a bookshelf, but you really have to, it has to fit in with interior decor taste to a great extent.
Well, it is the bookshelf, isn't it?
Exactly. So I think you have to like the look. Basically, you have to like it as well as invest in it. And I think that's one sort of clear difference between this and most of the other kind of possibly collectible kind of asset classes.
But do you take people seriously, John, when they say, I have a portfolio of investments which includes some antique furniture?
I mean, no. I don't mean it's not a core part of a portfolio. I mean, neither are rare books or wine. I suppose with these sort of investments, if you're actually thinking about them as investments, they have to be an add-on to a core portfolio, which implies that you have to already have quite a lot of wealth and a decent-sized pension put away. The difference, I suppose, between something like wine, though, which is relatively homogenous and also is quite well set up for investment, even if it's still highly risky. There are a lot of people who will help you build a wine portfolio. Building a portfolio of antique furniture that, you've stuck in a vault somewhere just isn't really something that people are likely to do. So it's very much more on the collectible side than the investable side from that point of view.
And yet, James, prices are low in the unfashionable stuff. So there is the opportunity to speculate, isn't there? And as you were saying, see something, recognise something that has inherent value long term, and buy it now whilst you can.
I guess I wouldn't recommend buying it purely from an investment point of view. I mean, it goes back to what you're saying in terms of you have to like it and live with it, and that's, really important. But I think a lot of that, when you're talking specifically about sort of brown furniture from the Georgian period, it's incredibly well valued right now. And, you may not necessarily get a huge return in your investment in years to come, but actually you can live with it for a number of years, you can enjoy it, and it will still have a value when you've finished with it in however many years.
It's also something of our culture as well, isn't it? If you're British and you're listening to this, then we have a great heritage in antique furniture. And actually, it's kind of odd in a way that everyone's gone for this kind of Scandinavian, Japanese minimalism. There comes a point where you might want to say, well, in my house, I'd like something to reflect my own cultural heritage, which is this old wooden stuff.
And also, I think one thing that's quite often overlooked is we talk about antiques are green, how you're recycling and reusing things that have been around for a couple of 100 years, rather than going out and buying something new, find something that has already been made that in it has beautiful quality in terms of the craftsmanship and the way it's made.
Okay, so what kind of things should we be looking for then? I mean, it's not going to be the big mahogany table for the reasons we've said. It takes up too much space. So you've got a modern table and then you stick what on it? A Chinese statue that's 400 years old?
That is something that people do, yeah. I mean, in what I'm dealing in, you're talking about perhaps a really nice side cabinet by a top French maker like Linker or Dasson that are really exceptional, very best quality when they were made, can have sort of marquetry inlay or ormolu mounts, so can be quite opulent. And you put a nice contemporary painting above that, and it looks incredible. It really looks fantastic.
And if you're listening to this and thinking, well, I've got some stuff in my parents' house or in my attic, this might be a good opportunity to sell. The inclination might be to try and do it up first, bit of reupholstering, etc. But that's not recommended, is it?
No, definitely not. I think if you've got something to sell, you're much better off to, particularly if you're approaching a dealer for it, to sell it in its current condition. I mean, the worst thing you can do is try and restore it yourself, because more often than not, you'll end up causing more damage and more work that you'd only have to undo to put it right in the first place.
And I'm curious about fashion, because John mentioned, we've been talking about fashions affecting these kinds of investments. Have you had, I guess, the Bridgerton effect? Because actually costume drama is a big deal, isn't it? People are interested in Victorian era stuff.
There are certain furniture, certain styles and periods that are more popular, more fashionable. I mean, antiques were always the fashion of the age, and that's when we're looking at a piece of furniture. If I wanted to date it, I'm looking at particular stylistic features to help me date it, because something that was made in the George IV period compared to something that was made in the Victorian period, the style will be quite different, and that's what I'm using when I'm dating a piece of furniture, if you like. The fashions were always changing, and much like they're changing today. And I'll give you an example: black furniture that have ebony, or French furniture that has ball, which is tortoiseshell inlay. That sort of furniture has seen a huge resurgence of interest over the last 10 to 15 years. And that's been driven, I would say, predominantly by the Russian and the Asian markets, who have much more interest in that sort of decorative scheme and that sort of style of furniture that perhaps wasn't there 15 years ago.
Yeah, John, do you think, again, with online auctions and the Chinese, you're looking at a market that is changing quite dramatically here?
Yeah, it's like all of the collectible markets. You suddenly, post about 2000 roughly, you suddenly had this influx of buyers from the likes of China and Russia in particular. And they were buying up everything from wine to art. And again, you've got, with wine, that doesn't matter. It's just a whole load more people buying Bordeaux, basically. But with something like furniture and something like art, it means that you get different trends entering the market. So your kind of Chinese buyers are going to be interested in different things, and it also means that, for example, heirlooms that are related to China suddenly become much more valuable because they've got, again, it's like you were saying about us with the kind of Regency stuff. People want to buy a part of their own history. That's made a big difference to, I think, all the kind of collectibles markets.
And James, do you go sniffing around car boot sales? Is that just a sort of bargain hunt fantasy? Can you still find decent stuff there?
I'm sure if you went religiously through them, you would find the odd thing. I mean, things do turn up, but not really for furniture. I mean, that's probably more likely to find a bit of Chinese porcelain, that's rare or something like that. With furniture, that's not really where you're likely to find those sort of good bargains, if you like.
John, what kind of yields can you see? I mean, can you give us some exciting auction stats?
I mean, there have been some striking examples from auctions in recent years. For example, there was a pair of conoid lounge chairs from a well-known woodworker called George Nakashima. And in 2019, they went for $10,000. And then just in October 2020, they sold for more than double that, so like nearly $25,000 via a Chicago auction house. So, doubling in 1 year, you'd be pretty happy with that, even in the era of Bitcoin and the like. That's not bad. I think the thing to remember with all of these things again, though, is and this is why it is, investing in this stuff is a kind of wealthy person's game. It's not so much it's not the risks of investing and losing money so much as the lack of liquidity in these markets. It's like you have to have a decent amount of money if you can afford to have $10,000 tied up in a couple of chairs, because you can't run down to the local antiques dealer and sell it, like that day. I mean, the transaction costs will be high too, but that's the point. Is the fact you've got your money tied up in these things, and it's hard to get it back out. It's kind of like selling a house rather than selling a share.
Okay, so if you are going to a sort of certified antique dealer, how do you know that you're going to a good one?
So there's two main trade bodies in the UK for art and antiques, which is BARDA, the British Antique Dealers Association, and LAPADA, which are the Association of Art and Antiques. And there are various other trade associations, but they're the two largest. And any good dealer would be a member of at least one of, if not both of those. You know, they have codes of conduct in place, you know, to make sure that, you know, what they're selling is reputable, is well labelled, is clearly identifiable as what it is. So that's something that's certainly worth looking into when you are looking at a dealer.
And James, I've been asking everyone on this series for their investment heaven and their investment hell. So go on, tell us one investment that paid off for you in furniture.
Several years ago, we bought a cabinet. It was a table cabinet that somebody was selling in north of England, and it's an incredible thing. When we bought it, they didn't have the key, so they couldn't open the doors. It had been in somebody's attic for a number of years, but we knew
Great
it was
Lovejoy stuff already. Go on.
Yeah, we knew it was a very rare thing. And we bought it. We took it back and gave it to our restorer to clean. He opened the doors, and inside was the most incredible marquetry panel doors inside you could see, and all these little drawers, all with all these different scenes of different royal palaces and so on. And it was also signed on the inside, so we found the full details. It was made by, without boring you too much, it was made by a guy called Hausberg, who was a German emigre who moved to London. And when he moved in 1840, his papers were personally signed by Queen Victoria at that time. It was a process that used to take several years to allow a European citizen to become naturalised, and he did it in a matter of weeks. This cabinet, it said in the marquetry in the bottom, began in 1840, finished 1857. So it was his masterpiece. In the typical German tradition, a master craftsman would have to make their one masterpiece.
And it was just languishing in a garage in...
It'd been in an attic. Apparently, husband had bought it many years before, and the wife hated it. So when he passed away, she stuck it in her attic, and it'd been up there for a number of years. And we sold it to a private collection in Asia, and
you're not going to tell us for how much, are you?
It was. I'm not. No.
Can you give us a proportion of return?
We did okay on it. Yeah, we but it was an incredibly rare thing. You know, it was and just the most wonderful quality.
Okay, and where have you ballsed up? Where hasn't it gone well? Where have you bought something that may have been delightful, but actually you lost a lot of money on it? Things
like, if you look at sort of Dutch floral marquetry furniture, things that in the late 18th century in Holland, they were making lots of what was very decorative furniture that had lots of inlay, floral marquetry of different flowers, birds, scenes like that. And the furniture is really interesting because it was, going back to talking about IKEA, it was the first flat pack furniture because the houses in Holland are incredibly narrow on the canals. They invented this sort of system where they would make a bookcase that would come in all these different sections, and you would just put it all together inside the property. It was really, really ingenious. But they did in the early 2000s. They don't now. People. So you have examples of bookcases or cabinets that might have made £15,000-20,000 that today you'd be lucky to get £2,000 for. That's something that really is out of fashion. That really people aren't really interested in anymore. So that unfortunately would be something that I would say would be an investment hell.
The voice of experience there, but thank you very much for being honest with us, James. And I'm going to take you up on that tour offer, but I want to do it in person, please. And if I do...
With pleasure.
Where am I coming along to? What's the address of your shop? Go on.
It's Kensington Church Street. So we're at 154 Kensington Church Street.
I will see you there. And apologies for anyone else listening to this who also spontaneously turns up. Although I hope it'll be a good news story. And with that, we close the door. The antique heavy door on this third episode of Investments Unwrapped. My thanks to James and John for joining me today. This series is brought to you by the Platinum Card from American Express and MoneyWeek. The Platinum Card from American Express allows you to save as you spend, earning you a membership rewards point for every £1 you spend on your card. Your points can be used to pay for almost any item on your card statement, and they never expire, so you can save them up and spend them when the time is right. What's more, the Platinum Card also offers over 30 travel and lifestyle benefits, including airport lounge access, worldwide travel insurance, as well as a 24/7 concierge service that can find you the best antiques dealer in town or a relaxed holiday away where you can recline on your favourite sofa. To find out more about what the Platinum Card has to offer, just search Amex Platinum. Annual fee £575, terms and conditions apply. If you'd prefer a card without any rewards, other features, or a card membership fee, an alternative is available, the basic card. The information spoken about in this podcast does not constitute personal advice to invest and is not a personal recommendation on the specific products mentioned. If you're not sure whether an investment of this type is right for you, please seek advice from suitable financial advisors who will be able to advise based on your personal circumstances. If you choose to invest, the value of your investment could be at risk and fall, so you could get back less than the amount you put in originally. Investing in antiques is not regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Next time on Investments Unwrapped, we're looking at classic cars. And to have that parked in your feed in 2 weeks' time, just follow The Week Unwrapped via your podcast app of choice, and with that you will also get our main show delivered to your phone each and every Friday. Thanks for listening. I've been Olly Mann, the producers Sophie King and Lauren Armstrong-Carter at Rethink Audio. Bye-bye.